Premier League football is almost upon us once again for the 2025-26 season. And what does that have in store for us? Champions, flops, meltdowns, dark horses. And with today's video, I'm predicting for each of the 20 clubs 3 predictions for the good, the bad, and the ugly. So it's fairly simple: 1 good prediction, 1 bad prediction, and 1 ugly prediction to see what's going to happen in their season. Arsenal. The good: Arsenal will reach a cup final, whether it's FA Cup final or the League Cup final. The bad: Arsenal won't sign a 15-goal a season striker. I originally had signed Djokovic at all, but recent news put that prediction straight to bed. So I had to change it up before I put this video, but they will not sign a 15-goal season striker. And unfortunately, even if it's Djokovic, I'm predicting he won't have 15 goals despite being one-class striker. The ugly: Arsenal will finish outside the top 4. Maybe it's where my bias comes in a little bit towards Arsenal, but I'm predicting them to finish outside the top 4 this season. Still might get Champions League football, depending. Aston Villa. The good: Aston Villa will reach the Europa League final. I think they'll continue the good form of English teams in Europe this season and will be very, very hungry to reach Champions League football, and we'll see Europa League final as that ticket to get Champions League football for the following season, if it's not inside the top 4 at least. So Aston Villa will reach the Europa League final. The bad: Aston Villa will not win a league game in December, with a tough fixture list in December with Brighton, Arsenal twice, Manchester United, Chelsea. I think it will be a tough month for Villa, especially after a tough run in Europa League, bit exhaustion, maybe a couple of draws in the league. The ugly: Aston Villa will finish outside the Champions League places in the Premier League once again. I think they'll just miss out maybe a 6th place finish, I reckon. It'll be tough for them to take again, especially after spending all that money. Bournemouth. The good: Bournemouth will finish inside the top 10 once again. Despite making a lot of sales over this season, especially key players, I think they'll strengthen up once again. Especially if you keep Areola for most of the season, I think they'll go strength to strength and will reach the top 10 of the Premier League once again, potentially challenging for Europe near the end of the season. The bad: will draw a lot of games. I think one thing that'll stop them from Europe is probably potentially a lot of draws this season, especially against lower teams. The ugly: Bournemouth will lose Areola at some point through the season. Whether Juventus or AC Milan come into him, it'll be one of those clubs, but I think they'll end up losing him midway through the season, let's say November time, December time. But I think it'll be a big loss for them. And who do they get in from after that? Brentford. The good: Brentford will get 11 points from the first 5 games, maybe with 3 wins and 2 draws potentially, or whatever combination. The bad: Brentford will struggle to beat teams lower in the table, maybe teams near relegation. I think they'll struggle against them, putting them towards relegation zone themselves against teams beneath the beaten to try and potentially stay up this season, especially after selling a lot of their good players and losing a very good manager. The ugly: Brentford will be relegated in April with Keith Andrews at the wheel. It's not a good choice, and it's going to provide really bad for them. Brighton. The good: Brighton will qualify for Europe. This season will be the season, let's say, European Conference League they'll get, maybe through 7th place or League Cup. The bad: will lose to a League 1 or League 2 team in the League Cup, either 2nd round or 3rd round, and it will be a strong squad they put out, but unfortunately will lose to a low league team. The ugly: will lose a key player to injury, and I think they'll challenge for Champions League places, but will fall off near the end of the season, similar to what Forest did last season. Burnley. The good: they will take relegation to a final day. I think they'll fare a little bit better than previous couple teams that have come up from Championship to Premier League, but inevitably I think they'll end up going down regardless, but we'll take it to the last game at least and come close. The bad: Burnley will only be relegated by 1 point. You're probably wondering why this is a bad prediction. I think taking it to the final game and only be relegated by 1 point will be very heartbreaking, especially for our newly promoted squad. And it'll be hard to take, which is, well, relegation is a bad thing regardless. The ugly. Burnley will only win one of their first 7 games. I think Burnley will drastically improve throughout the season, but once Scott Parker's gone, that'll be it. But when Scott Parker's in, I think they'll definitely struggle, especially with the first 7 games. Got a lot of tough games coming up, and definitely will not be an easy start back in the Premier League for Burnley. Chelsea. The good. Chelsea will finish inside the top 4. I think they'll finally claw themselves back into the top 4 and solidify Champions League place through that way, and potentially have a very good season doing so. The bad. Chelsea will crash out of the Champions League playoffs of round of 16. I think after a bad league phase, I think they will crash out early in the Champions League due to fatigue from the Club World Cup, and will have to focus mostly on the league. The ugly. Chelsea will lose heavily to an unexpected Premier League team, and to make it more precise, Arsenal, Man U, Man City, Tottenham, Newcastle, the likes of that don't count, and heavily has to be three or more goals at least. But I think they will lose to an unexpected team quite heavily through the season at some point. Crystal Palace. The good. Crystal Palace will have a late resurgence at the end of the season to scrape 12 or higher. You're probably wondering why, but I think due to Europe, they'll initially struggle, especially with strength and depth and not used to playing in Europe. But I think once they're out of Europe, they'll eventually kick on and gain a respectable finish. The bad. Crystal Palace will struggle in the Premier League due to Europe. If they do keep their European players, I think their strength and depth is not the best for them, or at least for quality in it at least. But if there's no Europe, they will exit the FA Cup third round to a League 2 team at home, at Selhurst Park, maybe to a Oldham, MK Dons or something like that, or maybe a lower League 2 team. The ugly. Crystal Palace will lose a lot of key players this summer or January transfer window, with Eze and their key players being linked away this season. I think they will definitely struggle to keep hold of them, especially to an Arsenal, Chelsea or Man U. Everton. The good. Everton will reach an FA Cup semi-final, beating Liverpool on the way to that semi-final, or in the semi-final at least. The bad. Everton will struggle early on for wins. I think it'll take a while for the new players to gel. And Moyes is a good manager, but I think it'll take a while for them to eventually gel, but he will eventually get them kicking on throughout the season. The ugly. Everton will be in a relegation battle on the last day of the season. I know this contradicts what I just said a minute ago about them kicking on after a bad start, but I think they'll have a bad finish as well. Could drag them into a relegation battle, but they probably will survive. But relegation battle on the last day of the season for Everton. Fulham. The good. Fulham will finish in the top 10. If they can get the good backing behind them and keep the manager, good few signings, I think they very well can push for top 10 and potentially Europe. The bad. Fulham won't qualify for Europe. I know I said that they might push for it, but this is probably the main goal for Fulham, but I don't think they'll actually qualify for it this season. The ugly. Fulham will have a terrible away record this season. I think Fulham will do very well at home, but away, I think they'll struggle for wins, potentially even draws, losing a lot of games. Leeds United. The good. Leeds United will do the double over Manchester United. Maybe I'm going to have to try and be a bit careful with my predictions since I'm a Leeds fan myself, so I'm not trying to be too biased or give us really easy predictions and all that. I do think we can do the double over Manchester United this season, and how good will it feel to do that, especially over one of our biggest rivals, and to do the double over Man United like this would be fantastic. The bad. Leeds United will have a bad run in November. As a Leeds fan myself, it's kind of hard to pick a bad or ugly prediction from a young club, but looking through the fixture list, November's not the easiest run, neither is December, but I think November could be a hard month for us, especially back in Premier League and all that. We have a good start, so November will be a bad month for us. The ugly. Leeds United will get battered by 3 teams, at least 5-0. As a Leeds fan myself, it was kind of hard to pick this prediction. But if we continue playing with where we did in the Championship, some Premier League teams could potentially rip us apart, especially if we play a bit like that, like we did on Bielsa, sort of, at least. So 3 teams will batter us at least 5-0 through the season. Liverpool. For good. Liverpool will do a double this season. I won't tell you what double yet because it kind of involves next prediction, sort of. But maybe I will win at least 2 trophies this season, and I've still very solid season. Definitely, maybe a Champions League, FA Cup, League Cup, maybe could end up the season with one of those trophies. The bad. Liverpool won't win the Premier League though. I don't think they'll win the Premier League title this season. I think, like I said in my previous video, on the previous part of this video at least, we'll win FA Cup, League Cup, or Champions League maybe. The ugly. Liverpool will lose 3 games in a row, only scoring 2 goals during that time. I think we'll might have a little mini Man City spell, like Man City did last season, and struggle a little bit through the season, maybe losing 3 games in a row, not scoring that many goals, maybe a little bad patch there, after maybe a couple injuries or whatever. Manchester City. The good. Manchester City will reclaim their Premier League title this season. I think they'll win. Well, it won't be comfortable as they've done it recently, but we'll still win it regardless, and maybe a tough battle, maybe to the final day of the season, or maybe the final third or second to last game of the season. The bad. Manchester City will get knocked out by PSG, Bayern Munich or Barcelona in the Champions League round of 16 or quarterfinals. I don't think they'll win the Champions League this season, and hence why it'll be a bad thing for them, because I think they'll want to win the Champions League once again for the second time in so many years. But unfortunately, they'll get knocked out early on. The ugly. Manchester City will lose Erling Haaland to injury in October for 4 months. I don't like saying someone's going to get injured or praying for them to get injured, but I couldn't really think of any other ugly prediction for Manchester City. And for a team that only relies on really one striker most of the time, losing someone like Haaland for that long would be potentially disastrous for their season and could put a lot of things in jeopardy. Manchester United. The good. Manchester United will reach a cup final. Even when they're bad, they still tend to reach a cup final regardless if it's a European competition, a cup competition or something like that. Regardless, they're always reaching a cup final, and I think they'll do it again, either League Cup or the FA Cup this season. One of those at least, and maybe win it, lose it. That's not prediction, but we'll be in a cup final. The bad. Manchester United will end the season with only 2 wins in their last 10 games. I think they'll have a somewhat decent season, but I think they'll fall off just near the end and end the season badly with only 2 wins from the final 10 games. I know that sounds like it could potentially be an ugly prediction, but you'll see in a why. You'll see in a second why. The ugly. Manchester United will finish below mid-table again. I know it says mid-table there, but it's meant to be below. But anyway, I think they'll have a very bad season, maybe finishing between 14th and 11th. If they're lucky, I think they'll fall off near the end of the season and fall below mid-table and lose out on Europe again, depending on the cup final, if I get that right. Newcastle United. The good. Newcastle United will reach the quarter-final of the Champions League. I think we'll have a very good, solid season in Champions League this season, especially if we get a few more signings in. We'll probably end up getting beat by a PSG or Bayern Munich or Madrid in the quarter-finals, but I think they'll flag for England in Europe very well this season and potentially reach quarter-finals of the Champions League. The bad. Newcastle United will lose Isak this summer or in January transfer window at least. I think losing a player like that will deal him a huge blow, and it would be good, especially if they haven't got a striker to replace someone like him that quick at least. The ugly. Newcastle United will lose to Sunderland at some point through the season. I think over one of the 2 games we play against them, they'll lose maybe a 1-0 or 2-1 loss for their main rivals, Sunderland. Nottingham Forest. The good. Nottingham Forest will reach the semi-finals of the European Conference League this season. Can't see why not. It's not the greatest competition, and you probably won't have that many strong teams in there. Not to this competition, but Forest should do well and potentially could go all the way if they have the right strength and depth and quality. The bad. Nottingham Forest's form will suffer due to Europe. We've seen it in so many teams before, but their form tends to suffer in the Premier League due to Europe, especially if they're not equipped for it or used to playing in Europe week in and week out. The ugly. Nottingham Forest will be in a tight relegation scrap until March. I think they'll fall off a bit near the end, but by March, I think they'll pull themselves away from relegation zone and get themselves mathematically safe by that point. Sunderland. The good. Sunderland will beat Newcastle at least once. This is a bit of copy and paste of my previous Newcastle ugly prediction, but the good thing, Sunderland will beat Newcastle at least once throughout this season. The bad. Sunderland will be relegated. I know they'll potentially give it a better go than the previous couple of Championship clubs come up to Premier League, but ultimately I think it'll end up with them being relegated maybe by the fourth or fifth final game. The ugly. Sunderland will have a goal difference of minus 35 or anything lower than minus 35. I think it'll be a very long and hard season for them, especially against teams like Man City, Liverpool. Will probably concede a lot of goals to teams like that, maybe even Tottenham or Arsenal along the way as well, with a goal difference of minus 35 or more. Tottenham Hotspur. The good. Tottenham will finish inside the top 5. Not guaranteeing Champions League football. Could be Champions League football, maybe. But with Thomas Frank at the wheel, I think they've got a very good manager in Thomas Frank. And I think if he's got right backing behind him and the right players in, he could do wonders with his Tottenham squad and potentially get them challenging higher in the Premier League and Champions League. The bad. Tottenham will struggle in the Champions League phase. I think they'll have a hard time in the league phase, especially after this. Maybe against teams, maybe against Madrid, Barcelona, Munich, if you have them teams like that. I think it'll initially struggle, maybe a 24th to 19th finish. The ugly. Tottenham will lose to Arsenal twice, conceding 7 goals across both games. I know Tottenham fans might hate me for this, but I'm actually a bigger fan of Tottenham than I am Arsenal. But with Arsenal's strength this season, I think they'll have too much for Tottenham. And 7 goals across both games, not 7 goals in each game. So I think Arsenal will beat Tottenham both games this season. West Ham United. The good. West Ham United will have really good home form this season. I think they'll make the London Stadium a fortress this season for themselves and have very, very good home form where teams will struggle to come and beat them and only manage to take a point from every now and again, maybe 2 or 3 losses all season. The bad. West Ham will lose to all 3 promoted teams at least once throughout the season, whether it's home or away. I think, like Burnley, Sunderland and Leeds, I think they definitely could beat West Ham at least once throughout the season. And there's always one team that gets beaten by one really, really bad team in the Premier League. I think West Ham could be that team who getting beat by Sunderland. The ugly. West Ham will have a major injury crisis. Once again, I don't like wishing injuries on people, but all I can think of right now, I think West Ham will struggle with injuries and it will dampen their chances of the top 10. Wolverhampton Wanderers. The good. Wolverhampton Wanderers will have a really good cup run, reaching the quarter-final in both cups, in the FA Cup and League Cup. I think they'll have a successful season in both cups this season and do very well, potentially maybe even reaching the final one. The bad. Wolverhampton Wanderers will fall off from a top 10 finish at the end of the season. I think they'll have a decent midway through the season, mid-season, but will ultimately fall off near the end, costing themselves potentially Europe and a top 10 finish. Bit ugly. Wolverhampton Wanderers will get battered by 5 goals on 4 occasions, as realised on the photo there. It only says by goals, but it's 5 goals. I meant to say 5 goals. I think they'll get battered by 5 goals at least. Whether it's a 6-1, 7-2 loss, something like that. 5 goals at least on 4 occasions. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for watching my video on Geekly Videos with my good and bad and ugly predictions on the Premier League football. And if I don't get 3 predictions right at least, you know what, I'll eat a Nutella and sardine sandwich. There we go. Thanks for the day, thanks for the review, and have a great day. Take care, everybody.